We've also heard a lot of requests for grocers and other uses that we've taken very seriously, and we've continued those conversations. So we really want the public to feel free to give us feedback across those sites. Just real high level before I step down. So Del Tech Core and Shell, we're starting this October, and we plan for it to go to June 2025. Tidal Health will be the exact same time frame from October to June 2025. The Mill Core and Shell will be late December we'll finish right around the same June time frame. We're trying to target that middle of next year. And then I mentioned Community Bank of Delaware finishing this year. One thing I want the public to know as well is that we're going to start on-site site work this September, and it'll carry through until the end of 2025. But the off-site road work will cause some disruptions. We're working with DelDOT on all the road work around all 4 roads, and we expect that to go all the way till February of 2026, and that'll be phased in across each road. So a little bit longer of a timeline on the outside state roads, but it's be a big project, and I wanted to announce that to the public now that there will be some disruptions around the 22-acre site over the next 2 years. That's it from my end. Any questions while I'm here?
Yeah. Are there any questions from council?
I have one. Can I just get some clarification? So far, everything I've heard about Bright Bloom is that it was going to be an early childhood Montessori center, which I think people were excited about the opportunity for daycare early, and you just changed it to now it's going to be supporting students with autism?
Yeah, so Bright Bloom is not a daycare. It's a therapy center for children with autism. The daycare is a separate user. We were in talks with a nonprofit board, Montessori Works, and we still are. They have not committed to the site 100% in terms of a lease yet. We've been in prolonged talks with them. They have funding tied up with Longwood that they're waiting on hearing until they're fully committed.
Okay.
All right, any questions from council?
One question.
Vice Mayor.
Yep.
Mr. Hurry, you mentioned the state roads. Is your completion for the Toll Drive and the Sussex Avenue portion so that people could get access, is that accelerated? Or is there access? There may not be any access down those roads. I can't remember from the last
To their site?
Yes.
There is, yes, sir.
Okay.
They're cleaning up some of the entrances and.
Yes.
So most of our work, we are doing some mill and overlay work, which would be for a short time frame, maybe close down the road while we repave both, even the city roads. It's part of our scope of work, but the bulk of our work is around our entries and how those are being redone, and that shouldn't impact general traffic flow there. But we are doing mill and overlay on Atlanta and Stein, which will impact some traffic.
So I guess I'm confusing the things. I was just concerned about access to the site for Community Bank, Dollar Tree, some of the places that are open.
Yeah, I can assure you I'm very committed to making sure those guys stay in operation too.
It would seem like during that period where the state roads are being worked on and that's disrupted, that you would need to have the city streets that surround it, accessible and so that people could get in and out.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's definitely our intent. We won't do that all in one shot. It'll be phased in so that there's always access. We are making all the entry points a little bit safer than what they were before, and it will be a phased approach where it's not every entry shut down at once. That is going to be a challenge, admittedly, over the next 2 years to sort of phase in. The one I'm worried about most, but we have to work with DelDOT with this, we won't drive that process, is how we renovate Stein Highway, and we're renovating 2 of the 3 entries along Stein Highway. But that'll all be in conjunction, kind of driven by DelDOT's requirements.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Herrera, do you just want to touch on the utility status and what your ultimate goal for the utilities are?
Yeah, so around the whole site for the public utilities, sorry, I'm going back to the aerial so you can see it. Sorry about that. So around the front along Stein Highway, you'll see there's a green buffer right along the front there. Our current plan is to bury the power lines there. It'll be better visibility. It tends to be a nicer detail, like there won't be damage to the power lines. We're undergrounding all of those utilities, and that'd be some of the first state road work that we're gonna do, is gonna put the utilities underground. Going down Atlanta as well, we're gonna bury those lines, and we're putting up street lighting that matches the city standards. On the back street along Tall, we are not gonna bury those lines. Those are the ones that will stay above ground, but we are adding some street lighting there, to the city road. Yeah, so that's the biggest things, that we're burying all the utilities around the site. And then most of the utilities around our site are all going through conduit underground. There's a city easement that goes through the middle of our site, which will carry most of the power, sewer, and water. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
City Manager? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Any more, Councilman Quinlan?
Yes, I just have one question. Now, you were saying the new tenants coming in, but the existing tenants in there, are they going to still be the same as Dollar Tree, Sal's? Are they committed to you as well?
Dollar Tree and Sal's are both committed.
Okay.
Yes,
so-
they're both staying, and Rite Aid.
And Rite Aid, well, what about the Chinese restaurant?
Chinese restaurant, they're on a month-to-month. We're still unsure if they'll be there long-term.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Had any bites on the bowling alley yet?
We've had so many conversations on the bowling alley yet, bowling alley. I'm very picky on who we're working with there. We've had talks with several potential operators. I have admittedly not made a selection yet.
Okay.
I really want that to go well. So I've interviewed a few, in fact, I'm meeting on site tomorrow with a few other operators at different times. And we have some other entertainment-centered operators that I've also been in talks with. Not necessarily bowling focused, but entertainment focused. I've actually, just in general, since the demolition started, we've shifted brokerage firms. We've had a lot of feedback and a lot of interest from some really exciting potential tenants. So hopefully there's more to come.
Any additional questions for Mr. Herrera? Okay, well,
Thank
Mr.
you, guys.
Herrera, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rob.
It's a very exciting. I know the city is at a fever pitch now that they get to see some progress out there, and yeah, very excited for it. Yes, Mr. Andrews. Good. All right. Well, we should be back now live via the streaming service. We're going to move on to new business number 2.
Council has in their package a recommendation from the Director of Public Works, Mr. Burley Mears. The city did receive 6 bids in response to our bid advertisement for 2024 street paving for summer. The low bidder was Zach Excavating. The total that they bid was $103,536. The city has not in the past worked directly with Zach Excavating. We did have a contract with the county that they worked on when we interconnected Bridgeville and Greenwood. So the Director of Public Works is recommending that they that we award this bid to Zach Excavating. The 2 streets that are under this contract will be Magnolia Drive, we'll finish that out, and then Delaney Street out by the new Amazon warehouse, we'll finish that portion of that road as well with this proposed contract.
Okay. Are there any questions from council regarding this motion? Okay. If there are no questions, I will accept the motion.
Councilwoman Grassett, I'd like to make a motion to award the bid for paving 2024 to Zach Excavating, the low bidder in the amount of $103,536 as presented.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Councilman Holland, I second that motion.
Councilman Hall with a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. We'll move on to new business number 3.
Thank you, Mayor. So the next item is presenting for approval a law firm retainer agreement that would authorize firms to represent the city of Seaford in asserting a timely legal claims on behalf of the city to participate in a Phase 1 settlement process in multi-district litigation pending in federal court in South Carolina against DuPont and 3M related to contamination of water supplies. And it's related to the per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or commonly known as PASFs. There's also PFAS and PFOS. They're what's termed forever chemicals, and there's been a lot of that, talk of that recently in the last few years. Where this is most ubiquitous is where there is aqueous firefighting foam, and that has a lot of the PFAS in it, and so that it's come up in contaminated groundwater drinking supplies. The city of Seaford has had at least one test where we have found this in our water system. The known treatments at this point are granulated activated carbon. Just for council's edification, we do have a granulated activated carbon system on the Arbutus well. So in that instance, we test the raw water and the finished water. There's some legal technical things here. Our city solicitor, Mr. Luke Mehta, is here, and I'm going to turn this presentation over to him for more of that. When we receive notice of this, there is a very short time frame for us to get in line for this. Mr. Mehta's firm, to his credit, he got all over this. He got us exposed to some experts that he's aware of. He gave us the Director of Public Works and I, some timelines. They've taken some initiative here, and just for council's consideration, we are in process. We need to move forward with this to get in line for any claims that may occur. The numbers here in the national settlement are very large, and if we do have to do treatment, additional treatment, it's in the millions of dollars, depending upon how much of this contaminant is in our drinking water supply or will be in our drinking water supply. So with that, I'll ask Mr. Mehta to come up and if he would address council.
Thank you, and good evening. Good to see you again. I'm Luke Mehta with the law firm at Barrett Mandalis, your city solicitor, whom we've met. I met you before. I noticed that I believe that the agenda item was recently modified. I think initially the agenda item was posted specifically with regard to the Napoli firm. I understand the agenda item has been modified to make it more neutral because whom you retain is totally up to you, right? So I'm your city solicitor. My firm is not associated with a Napoli firm. We have partnered with other firms. I'm not going to give you a hard sell. Whom you retain is totally up to you. But I am here to talk about some significant deadlines, at least with regard to phase one of the settlement. So there's a deadline of this Friday, for public entities such as Seaford, who operate public water systems, to file a claim to participate in the phase one claims process, to participate in distributions from a $14 billion with a B fund established by DuPont and 3M in litigation that's pending in the multi-district litigation in South Carolina. This is a nationwide class action settlement, so liability has already been established, and 3M and DuPont have put $14 billion into this phase one claim pool. And that amount will be distributed to eligible claimants who file a claim by this Friday. Eligible claimants to participate in phase one would be a public water provider who has detected PFAS, polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFAS, forever chemicals, or everywhere chemicals, as they are sometimes referred to, and submit a claim by this Friday, as well as, and this is important, as well as demonstrating a baseline through a testing kit, which, even though we have not yet been retained, and I can talk about that, let me just say from the get-go, as your city solicitor, my main goal is that you all retain somebody and file a claim by this Friday. Whether it's us or anybody else is not my primary motivation here. So just so that is very clear. because if you miss this deadline, then you forfeit forever the opportunity to participate in this initial phase. There's a phase 2. There are other defendants who will be brought in, but this initial phase 1, $14 billion amount has a deadline of this Friday. And then we have, even without being retained, we have facilitated, as Charles mentioned, we've been in discussion with him, with your Public Works Director, to ascertain what your levels are, how many wells you have. We overnighted last night, I believe, a testing kit for you, whether you use us or whoever. It's really important that you fill that out and return that. We have partnered, my firm is Baird Mandalis. We have partnered not with a Napoli firm, but with 2 other nationally renowned plaintiffs firms who operate in this space. I'm sure you may have heard of them before. One is Barron and Budd, based in Texas. They are very, very well-known plaintiffs firm nationally, as well as the Kosich firm, both of whom have national reputations. They have leadership roles in the MDL litigation in South Carolina, including on the executive committee, class counsel, and the settlement counsel. Our firm, Baird Mandalis, also has a national reputation in this space, representing public entities. We are already involved in this litigation, and we will be representing other Delaware municipalities to assist them in filing this claim. There are standard retainer agreements. I understand that Napoli firm has sent you a standard retainer agreement. If you want to go with them, I think it's a 25% contingent fee, which is pretty standard. It's actually below most percentage for a contingent fee arrangement. The proposal that we have submitted, which would be a combined Baird Mandalis, Barron and Budd, and Kosich firm, collectively would also be a 25%. There is no real difference between the Napoli proposal and our joint proposal. The retainer agreements are largely similar. And finally, I would just say, in our case, again, you can go with whomever you want. You should file a claim by Friday. What you get with me is I'm your city solicitor, so I'm accountable. So if things go wrong, as Charles reminded me the other day, you got somebody you know and who's accountable to you and whom you can blame if we screw this up. But ultimately, the decision is yours, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. But to proceed, we would need either we or the other firm would need some sort of, yeah, guys, go ahead and file on our behalf by Friday.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
So from my rudimentary understanding of PFAS in itself, it was a substance used by fire departments and fires in years gone by, and now it's a big proponent of removing the PFAS from existence and replacing it with things that are more suitable now, that are not hazardous materials. So I guess my question to you would be, PFAS, in your understanding, was a very commonly used material.
Yep.
So it likely may have impacted many people over many different areas.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. And one other point, thanks for that, and it triggered one other point I wanted to make is this whole process has been triggered by the EPA earlier this year lowering the drinking water standard for PFAS, and that's really sort of the impetus for a lot of this. And so I think it's, this type of litigation is going to be rampant for a long period of time. This is sort of the first salvo. But there will be other defendants, other settlement funds down the road.
Questions from council?
Now, comment.
Go ahead, Councilman Bradley.
We are not familiar with this other group. We're familiar with our attorney, and according to the discussion we had this morning, you've been hands-on, boots on the ground right from the get-go. So I think this is pretty much a no-brainer.
Okay. Vice Mayor?
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Mehta. Several years ago, when the town of Blades had their issues where they tested positive with elevated levels, and they got relief. I think that's when the city of Seaford started making their own tests out of an abundance of caution. And are those historical tests helpful in establishing your baseline, or is that test kit essential?
Yes, so thank you. So to be eligible to participate in this phase one, a municipality with a public water system must have detected PFAS at some level prior to June of 2023. So certainly those historical levels are important for your eligibility. The baseline is really to help monitor and measure the quantum of damages or your recovery at the end of the day in terms of where you are now going forward. So there's both the eligibility piece and then the quantum of damages. And the test kit is more about establishing a baseline for the amount of your damages going forward.
So my next question, if I could, would be, is there going to be a continuum of testing over, because you've established a baseline, where are you going to figure out where you're going?
Yeah.
Is that cost recoverable under the settlement, or is that something that Public Works Department is on the hook for?
So whomever you retain will be working closely with your city manager and your director of public works, but in essence, it's the cost of treatment, the cost of testing. Monitoring will also be a big deal, and for many of these cities, there will be an obligation to not only test and treat, but to monitor down the road, and the idea is that all of that would be recoverable. That whole process, I'm sure, will be played out in spades over the next many months, if not years. But the key at this point is just to get into the game to get a claim in. If you don't get in this Friday, there will be other settlement funds down the road, but this one goes away after Friday. And I apologize. I will tell you, I apologize for the relative late notice. I think this deadline caught a lot of people by surprise. I'm not into hard, quick sells, but we did feel it was important to bring this to your attention as soon as possible.
Councilman Quinlan.
Yes, thank you for your presentation as well. What could it mean for the city as far as a monetary settlement on this? Could it be millions of dollars? Could it be? What is it going to be based upon?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I don't have a good answer for you tonight. I don't want to be misleading to you or to anybody or to the public. I'll be happy to follow up and provide you more detailed analyses as we get further into the claims process. But as you can imagine, there's a fixed amount of money that's been set aside. It's going to be a function of how many people file claims, what the contaminant levels are, what the treatment costs are, how many wells you have. There are many, many variables. But $14 billion, even if you divide it up among thousands of claimants, which I suspect there will be, it's going to be significant. And my guess is you all are going to be incurring a significant amount of money. And that's the whole point, is to offset some of that. I'd be happy to follow up with you, including privately or publicly, to give you our best estimates as to what a recoverable amount might be once you submit a claim. I don't want to just give you an off-the-cuff answer right now. It'd be misleading.
We can't.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Just want to ask a question. Whoever we pick as a law firm, is it conceivable that all of this can be done on the city's part, what needs to be done to be ready to file by Friday?
So fortunately, because our city solicitor moved forward on this, as stated, we have the test kits. The Director of Public Works has filled out the necessary questionnaire. We had to identify our wells. We had to give historical pumping data for each well so we can say the volume and the amount of contaminant. So we have done that. He has transferred that back. So I'm going to say to you, I believe we are where we need to be for this filing deadline on Friday, if we move forward with the solicitor's firm.
I would just say filing is one thing, then there's going to be a matter of prosecuting, perfecting the claim. It's a fairly complex process. So again, whether you use us or somebody else, I would recommend that you have the benefit of counsel.
Do we have any additional questions from council? Okay, if no further questions, I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the city manager to execute a law firm retainer agreement authorizing the firms Barron and Bud PC, Kosich, Sumich, Parciola, and Taylor LLC, and Baird, Mandalis, Brockstead, and Federico LLC law firm to represent the city of Seaford in asserting timely legal claims on behalf of the city of Seaford, to participate in a Phase 1 settlement claims process in multi-district litigation pending in federal district court in South Carolina against DuPont and 3M related to contamination of water supplies by per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS, and other hazardous water contaminants as presented.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor from Vice Mayor Henderson. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
I have a second from Councilman Bradley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It passes unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to move on to new business number 4, with the first reading.
And Chief Kraft is going to present that.
All right, Chief Kraft. Evening, Chief.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I got plenty of time tonight, right? So, Mr. Mayor, council members, city manager, thank you for having me here tonight. I've been asked to present at a high level the proposed curfew ordinance for the city of Seaford. Should be important to note that the city of Seaford has never had a curfew. However, many cities and towns throughout the state of Delaware have them and have used them, and some have them to implement during times of emergency. For purposes of this presentation, I wanted to start off by saying that this particular ordinance has an executive order attached to it that can only be implemented as necessary by the executive order of the mayor. So even if we present tonight, we come back at the next meeting and you approve it, we advertise it, and it gets posted, and it becomes in effect, we would not be enforcing it unless there were certain circumstances that we'll talk about here in a few minutes, unless the mayor enacted that through his order. The proposed curfew time is 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. Throughout the city, and there's some definitions that's important to know, and for our purposes, for our ordinance that we're presenting, is for juveniles identified as 17 years of age or younger who are not emancipated. Establishments or any businesses or places that are open to the public, parents would be considered as legal guardians or custodians of juveniles. Public places would be things such as streets and parks and shopping centers and similar areas accessible to the general public. And of course, emergencies. Emergencies could consist of fires, natural disasters, accidents, or even crime waves and things of that nature. I do know that there's a lot of questions probably the community is going to have, so we wanted to include, that's in the ordinance, also in our presentation, the exceptions. Some of these exceptions, but not limited to, are accompanied by a parent or authorized adult, which allows juveniles to be out during the curfew hours when accompanied by that parent or guardian. Emergencies, when a juvenile is assisting in emergency situations. I mean, that could be anything from volunteering at the fire department to coming upon an accident or something of that nature. First Amendment rights, So when exercising rights of free speech or assembly or religious practices, after notifying the police, there are certain parameters listed within the curfew that has a provision for that. And returning directly home within an hour of supervised event or activity, so if it's a school activity or work, certainly kids and juveniles of this age can go to work, be out past the 11 o'clock time frame, and and not be in violation of a curfew. So there's nothing here that's going to be heavy-handed, and there's also special permits that can be issued for parents to certify that their student or their child, will be out after the curfew during whatever particular event. And of course, operator of an establishment is when authorized by the police to remain on premises. You could have businesses also as part of this we'll talk about that are required by curfew to notify the police if there's a juvenile or group of juveniles on their establishment during those periods of time. What comes to mind when you're talking about a curfew is really the saying that it takes a village, right, to raise a family or a child. And this is really what we're going to be getting into here in a few minutes is about safety and security of our community and our children. So the responsibility and enforcement and violation penalties include parental and operator responsibilities. Parents are responsible, right, at the end of the day, to ensure that their juveniles comply with the curfew. So if you have a community member that says, well, kids are going to not pay attention to that, they're not going to follow that rule, well, that child has a guardian, has a parent that will be held accountable, after so many violations, or if they refuse to comply and refuse to come and get the child if we come across them during those times, if in fact it's enacted. And there's penalties that we'll talk about here below. Also, operators of establishments must adhere to the compliance of the juveniles in their presence, as we stated. And as far as police officers, they'll be enforcing curfews with warnings and penalties. The whole idea is to do a campaign, really, at the end of the day, to educate the community, the parents, the juveniles, that there is a curfew, this is what it is, this is what's required, this is what you can do to not be in compliance or violation of it. And also to provide them, with an opportunity to actually voluntarily comply with it so that we don't have to go to an enforcement component. That's the last thing that anybody will want to do. Some of the violations essentially would be for a parent, fine would start at $50, and for each subsequent offense it would increase by $25. For a juvenile, multiple reoccurring offenses of this, we would report them to the state of Delaware's juvenile compliance folks. Operators, they would be fined potentially with multiple violations, up to $50 for a first offense, which could increase by $50 for each subsequent offense. And of course, if a parent does a false certification of why that child or that juvenile is out, and you prove it, it could be a violation as well, which would also incur a fine of $50 and an extra $50 for each subsequent offense. Severability, evaluation, and similar curfews. So severability ensures the ordinance remains valid even if parts of the ordinance are challenged in court. Requires periodic evaluation by the mayor and city council to assess its effectiveness. So like I submit every council meeting a liaison report, I include data there and comparators. This is nothing more than doing something similar, maybe adding a column on there, we could do that. Similar curfews and ordinances, this is not a complete list that you see up here. Even since I submitted this, multiple other cities and towns have reported that they have one. So Laurel, Dewey Beach, Ellendale, Bethany Beach, Dover, Bridgeville, Delaware City, Harrington, Wilmington, Newcastle City, Cheswold, also others that came recently is Lewis, Clayton, Milford, Ellesmere, and I'm sure there's going to be many others to follow. So as you can see, this is more really a tool in the toolbox that provides the law enforcement department with an opportunity to try to increase the safety of a juvenile, because bad things can happen late in the middle of the night. Also to prevent the opportunity for kids to be create mischief and havoc out there and commit violations. And in fact, if you look at the liaison report I submitted, right on the very top is an update from 2 burglaries that ended up being multiple burglaries in multiple other towns and cities involving these same juveniles between the hours of 3 and 4. The latent prints came back, So we have arrested one, and we're currently trying to find the other. So these are things that happen, right, in the middle of the night. This will give us that tool to make that contact, to make sure we get them back safely where they should be, to prevent things like this from happening. So I try to go in and take a look at just a few pros and cons, and also provide you with some case studies to support the curfew. Reduce crime, potential to decrease juvenile-related crime during late hours. Parental responsibility encourages guardians to take oversight of their children. Protecting juveniles limits exposes these children to crimes as become victims or offenders. Some of the cons that have been discussed throughout the country would be potentially violations of civil liberties, which our curfew provides opportunities where that would not happen. Also, efficacy concerns, effectiveness may vary, so some folks say, well, if you do that, you're just going to displace the crime. Maybe it'll occur earlier in the night. Well, requires significant police resources, so that's a concern, genuine concern. If this was in place all the time, you could be running and just doing nothing but this. But obviously, you would do priority calls and things of that nature. In this particular case, that's not the case. This would only be enacted during those certain times of emergencies. Some of the case studies that do support and show the benefits of it, Washington, D.C. showed a decrease in juvenile crime during curfew hours. Oakland, California showed a reduction in vandalism and property. And then, of course, Phoenix, a decrease in gang-related activity. Quite frankly, we have a little bit of each of those things, and so do a lot of other cities and towns. So I did list some potential anticipated questions that mayor and council, the community, and businesses may have, and I just wanted to throw them out there. How will it be enforced fairly? Police will use discretion and follow guidelines. We have procedures in place to handle that. And what about teenagers, if they have to work, have legitimate reasons to be out? We've covered those reasons. They work. They can get certifications, school events, things of that nature. They're completely have exceptions that were listed that we reviewed. Businesses, obviously, some of those folks have asked, will that affect our operations? No. And also, could enforcement deter customers? Well, this is really primarily dealing with juveniles, not the business. So, no, the answer would be no. On the city council side, how would the city manage the cost associated with enforcing the curfew? Once again, you're limiting those costs unless you have a situation of an emergency, and then, quite frankly, we got to do what we got to do at that point. And then regular crime reports and enforcement data will be reviewed. That's how we'll manage the effectiveness of it. So just to show the why, just to show you some more supportive documentation here. So looked at our crime view mapping from June 1 of 2021 through June 1 of 2024, essentially the last 3 years. And looked at juvenile suspects and or defendants listed in crime reports from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. And that showed that there were 528 complaints involving juvenile suspects or defendants. That doesn't count all the other complaints that have no listed suspect or defendant that occur between those hours, which we suspect include quite a few juvenile probably offenders. Of that, 34 juveniles are listed as suspect defendants in 107 various types of criminal offenses. 22 of those 107 were domestic related. Of the whole 528, 93 complaints were domestic related involving juveniles. The lower left map shows where the charges occurred, where those offenses resulted in a criminal arrest. And the one on the left, or I'm sorry, the right, 528 complaints, shows where all of the reported complaints occurred. So this was just a presentation to provide a 40,000-foot view of the curfew, the why. Other jurisdictions have it and what they're using it for. Studies have shown in larger cities similar problems that it's been successful, and that there's exceptions, and I'm prepared to answer any questions that you may have.
Does anybody have a question for Chief? Councilman Holland?
Hey, Chief, has there been an increase
Pardon?
in juvenile crime? Has there been an increase?
I don't know that I'd
For
say
this
there's an
company?
increase in crime.
Okay.
I think it's just a continuation of juvenile-related crime.
I mean, since school been out, or is this ongoing?
I did a 3-year study. I don't break down into the weeds. I looked at what we're looking at overall holistically. I can tell you, in my opinion, it was much worse the first few years I was here.
Okay.
I think it's been helpful. We're not at full staffing, but having more staffing than we did has been very helpful. We've been using a lot of funding sources to saturate areas and do targeted enforcement and presence. And we have our cadets, which was really helpful. Thanks you to the council, mayor, for the approval of that program. That's a force multiplier. So with that said, it takes a lot, and we still are having a lot of juvenile crimes that I think could be prevented. I think it can get a lot worse during certain types of events, and I think that's why that exception was put into the rule for the mayor to enact through executive order the curfew. It just you could have riots, you could have situations, you could have unrest, you can have different things that could lead to things that we've seen in the past. And having this as a tool that you can implement right away is important. Right now, as you know, it's going to take a couple months, right, to get it. So if you need it and you don't have it, you're out of luck. If you have it and you don't need it, an ounce of prevention is the word of wisdom.
So do any of the towns that you quoted that have curfews currently have them in effect, or are they all going to, by executive order?
All a little different. So some of the times, it depends on, like, let's just take Wilmington for an example, because it's really Dover, Wilmington, Dover, and Laurel, right, that deal with the largest amount of volume of complaints per capita, and similar types of trends with juvenile offenses. So everyone has a little something different. Some have it where the mayor can enact it through executive order. Some break it down where juveniles that are less than 13 years of age have a tighter timeline where they can't be out after 9 p.m. Some have it where it starts at midnight to 5 or midnight to 6. Some have it where it's broken up, so it's one time frame during Monday through Friday, but it's midnight to 5 or 6 on the weekend, so it gives them a little bit more time. So there's no, but if you look at it in general terms, very consistent across the board. It's just those variations, which can be tweaked.
I guess what I was asking is whether there's people who have it on and keep it on.
There is.
And they, just to get an idea of the impact of resources and the impact of, trying to get these permits and things done.
Yeah, there is. There is, and I tell you, probably those agencies are your larger agencies. So like Wilmington has to have one enacted all the time, but they have an actual department of community officers that deal with a lot of juvenile crime.
And I know there's been a lot on the news. Matter of fact, it was just on the news last night about Cambridge. That they have one. That sounds to me like it's one that's enacted all the time.
It is. And Laurel has had one for decades, and they just literally enacted theirs about a month or two ago. And every incident that they've had that gives them a little more authority to make the contact, do the identification, do the contact, bring them back to the department, has led to some type of weapons or serious offense. The first one was released in the news. I think you could probably Google it right now. I think about a month or so ago, they saw 3 juveniles loitering on a balcony outside of an apartment complex. They made contact with them, and they had a concealed firearm and were attempting to do some type of crime that they observed. I forget what it was. So it really, truly does have its place. Do I think we could do it here year-round, and, would it be beneficial? Probably. But at this stage, I think it's beneficial to have it on the books, enact it if we need it. If we see a need, we can track the crime trends a little bit better. We just really started getting this prepared over, I believe, Searles was it the last couple months. Yes, sir. And along with a lot of other things that are going on right now with different initiatives. So I think this is a really good tool to have. And if we see the need to recommend that the mayor execute his authority, I would come back and make that recommendation to the council.
Councilman Quinlan.
How you doing, Chief?
Good, sir.
Good. Just kind of go back a little bit. It looks like Bridgeville has a curfew and Laurel has a curfew. Laurel currently has current curfew. Do you foresee possibly that some of these juveniles that are in Laurel, if we don't put a curfew ordinance on, could be coming up here because there's no curfew here and creating a lot more crime in our area?
So, I would say that was certainly one of the considerations that I made when I made the recommendation. You have to be out in front. If you're not, you're behind. And that's why it's really important to look at trends and look at what's happening around you. Just because it's not happening here right now doesn't mean that it won't be here tomorrow. And I can guarantee you, when I look around the country, we project things out, sometimes a year, 6 months, sometimes 2 and 3 years, and it typically is here. Everything we projected pretty much has came to fruition. And I think it's important to have it and be ready, because the city of Seaford's growing. We have a beautiful center, West Seaford, being built right now. Potentially going to have some entertainment potential there, right? Bowling alleys and who knows, maybe movie theaters, stuff like that. So, you know, you have to have exceptions for kids going to the movies and things, being escorted by adults. But you also need to address things like you cannot have children or anyone, right? Anyone committing vandalism and stealing and robbing and things of that nature. And it's happening all around us. We have been very fortunate. We've been blessed so far. I mean, homicides and shootings and robberies are occurring all around us. You know, so Seaford's doing well in comparison. We're trending much better this year. And, you know, it's a lot of it because of a lot of concerted effort on everybody's part to get that force multiplier in place with cadets, to get targeted overtime, to increase the staffing. And those are things that you have to do and have strategies to address crime where it's happening. And this is just one more tool.
What would you estimate the turnaround time would be? The mayor enacts one for it to actually be in place. Because, I mean, parents have to be able to get the notices from the jobs and fulfill all those other things. What could be the turnaround in an emergency?
Well, I think you do it immediately, quite frankly. We're going to do, you already have started the educational piece. WBOC already got me today. And I think they've already aired it at 6 o'clock. We weren't even here before council. So I think the education piece has already started. And once we have the second reading, of course, probably be more releases today. Second reading, if it gets approved, then you do the advertising. That's another way to educate the public. And then we put it on social media. We have flyers and stuff. We have a lot of community events we attend, have that information readily available. And it's also something that maybe the city could push out through the electric bills and things of that nature. QR codes seem to be the way to go. So you have to really do that out in front, like a campaign, basically.
Right, but are you anticipating people then responding to that in case we go to an emergency? So as a parent, if I have a teenager, I get the note from work and I take care of all that and have it, do I do anything with that at that point? I mean, what was your
Well, I've had
vision?
conversation with the city manager about having a form online that parents could just simply go to, a matter of minutes, and have it filled out. The day's technology, that's not hard to do. There's other things I'd like to see, but they cost money. And a matter of fact, there's something I presented today that, you know, it's a communication tool. But at the end of the day, what my hope is that guardians and parents that have juveniles within the city limits of Seaford are going to see this. They're going to know that we have it, that we can enact it at any time, dependent upon the mayor's authority and the situation, and that they are already educating their children. Hey, I would hope that they would do it without having to implement this because it's safer for the juvenile. It's better that they're in than out at those hours. They could get harmed. And they've already had, look at how many homicides have occurred with juveniles. Not that it just happens in the middle of the night, as we've seen, but it increases the risk. Parents need to probably take a look and have a little bit more authority over their children to keep them in the house during hours when nothing good happens, unless they're out for a legitimate reason. That would be my take.
Any additional questions for Chief? Okay, no additional questions. This is a first reading, so I'm sure it'll come back in a future council meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Do we have any old business?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay, how about reminders of meetings and setting of new meetings?
Just two things. Movie night in the park, it's in the grass lot behind City Hall here this Friday. It starts at 8 p.m. I apologize, I do not know the title of the movie. June Merritt, Director of Finance and Human Resources, will be the acting city manager from July 27th to August 4th. That's all I have, sir.
Enjoy your vacation.
Thank you.
All right, going to move on to council liaison reports, and we're going to open it up with Councilwoman Stephanie Gressett.
Reporting on Public Works and the wastewater department. In the past 2 weeks, our Public Works has been doing a lot of cleanups, completed inventory, and we've had a number of leaks that they've been having to address. Mr. Mears believes it's because of the dry weather we've been having and the hardness of the ground, but we've sprung quite a few leaks that they've been taking care of, as well as spraying weeds and doing some other repairs. One thing that the wastewater treatment department is very excited about, they just got their new computers, and I quote, "It's the happiest day we've had in 3 years," because they have their new PCs. And they've also been doing some repairs and trying to keep the plant running well, considering the extreme heat that we've had and the lack of rain, and now the lot of rain that we've had. It changes all of their chemical balance, and so they're trying to make sure everything stays good there. They have, in the next couple weeks, they plan to continue their camera use in the sewer mains. They're going to be installing 2 new water services on North Street, and performing maintenance as needed, and I would also guess filling out a report by Friday to get us in this lawsuit.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, indeed.
That's all I have.
All right, we'll move on to Police and Fire and Vice Mayor Dan Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to try to abbreviate this report because there's an extreme amount of volume since we did not meet. However, I will say that I have a report that is complete from Fire Chief Wilson. The total department responses for 2024 are 3,301 calls for an average of 16.1 per day, which is well above the running average. They've been extremely busy the month of July, if you drill down into the data. Moving down, total in-city responses for fire is 348, EMS is 1,409, out-of-city responses 213, and 901 for EMS. Assists were 70 for the fire department and 106 for EMS for the year. You'll see a list of significant incidents. Many were, or actually most of these significant incidents were assists out of the district, with several motor vehicle accidents and in the city. Apparatus status. Marine 87 is out of service for routine maintenance. It's getting some engine work done. Ladder 87 received its annual NFPA aerial inspection. It has a couple of minor issues to be corrected before it's returned to service. Engine 87.5, 87.2, and 87.9 received their annual NFPA pump tests, and all units passed. And all of the hydraulic rescue tools, the Homatro tools, have been tested or will be tested on August 8th. You'll see a chart with the fuel usage and the number of times at the pump. Training. The last training was July 15th at Station 87, and they combined with Bridgeville for ladder operations, and July 17th at the boat ramp for marine rescue operations. Next trainings are August 7th and August 21st. On the next page, you'll see a chart of training hours and total number of hours counted. Under emergency medical services, congratulations go out to Hannah Wheatley, firefighter EMT. She's completed 2 years with the Seaford Volunteer Fire Department. EMT ride-alongs are requesting time for EMT class at Delaware State Fire School. That's an accelerated course, and the fire department has some students riding to get their patient contact before the end of their class. Under news and events, you'll see for the year, there's been a total of 1,488.6 hours and 834 total personnel involved, over 79 events for community involvement of the department. You'll see some other news and events, but on the bottom there, the fire run data is at 9% higher than this time last year, and EMS run data is at 17.9% higher than last year at this time. It just goes to illustrate the amount of calls that are being taken by the fire department and the EMS. We have two separate reports from the Chief Craft, one from June 24th to July 7th. And in the interest of time and saving what's left of my voice, I will move down to the current period. Get back up here. Pardon the delay. From July 8th to July 21st, you'll see the total number of complaints in the 2024 column of 6,926. Moving down, you'll see the distribution of all of the events. Nice catch.
Thank you. I saved it.
Under all crimes, there was 166 all crimes, and you'll see the distribution of the felonies, misdemeanors, violations, civil, and other, for an 84% clearance rate, which is slightly lower than the periods before. Under drug complaints, you'll see there were 13 drug complaints with 12 arrests and 1 prosecution declined. The police department itself encountered 2 overdoses, one on Collins Avenue and one on Sussex Highway and Dogwood Avenue. Under traffic, there were 197 traffic contacts, which the chief explained that was the total traffic contacts were down from previous periods. However, the actual number of citations written was actually up over previous periods. So you'll see that there's 197 traffic contacts, 136 citations, and 18 warnings. There were 5 DUIs, 0 crash-related, 2 injury accidents, 1 on Sussex Stein Highway and McKean Street, and 1 on Sussex Highway and Herring Run Road. There's 1 hit and run, 1 bicycle accident, and 1 motorcycle or scooter accident during the period. And under significant events, you'll see that there are a number of events that the chief has called to your attention. And under administration, you'll see they've been very busy, including on the 17th, they met with Colonial Garden, its property manager, the chief, the deputy chief, patrol lieutenant, and the city manager met with the property manager to go over some methods to improve security around that property. Under training, the SPEAR team had their training, has their training twice a month, and the team, they're going over some scenarios with the cadets and other team members. The Seaford Police Department Police Recruit Training began on, or ends on August 29th. And the cadets were on bike patrol and ride-alongs, assisting patrol officers with complaints, arrests, proactive pedestrian and bicycle stops, as well as community engagement. The cadets handled a total of 8 arrests and multiple prisoner transports to Sussex Correctional Institute. Cadet Morales continued to assist with translating on numerous occasions. So we're really grateful to have the cadets available to help the uniformed officers in their taxing, especially with transport, since traditionally it takes a uniformed officer off the street and it frees them up to do more enforcement and patrol. I'm going to end it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. It's good to see so many officers on Saturday at the community events around town as well. Move over to administration and Councilman Orlando Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A meeting was held with Tall Gordon's developer regarding zoning restrictions, and they met with Tool Design, both Sign Highway / Bridgeville Highway, regarding roundabout concepts, and the library camera installation is completed, and other meetings and events were attended, and all the work is routine. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Councilman Holland. Going to move over to electric and Councilman Mike Bradley.
Okay, the topic for this evening's discussion. No, I'm kidding. Chris and Mike in the electric department did their first week of lineman school, and the sectionalized cabinet was installed behind Wawa. I mentioned that at the last council meeting. It's been changed. Oil samples from the 3 substation transformers were sent for carbon testing. This is required every 2 years. There was a power outage on Circuit 290, 3:30 a.m. to 5 a.m. on Friday, 6/12. The culprit was a goose, which got cooked. No pun intended. Pre-construction meeting about 5 lots on Nylon Boulevard, and a meeting about a new home on Pine Street. And for a sidebar, on the 4th of July, I got a call at work from my mother's 102-year-old cousin with concerns about the 4-way stop on Bridgeville Highway and Virginia Avenue. She's a resident and stated a traffic light would be a much better alternative. She's not driving now, but was in Seaford until she was 99. Respectfully submitted.
All right, I'm going to move over to Code, Parks and Recreation, and Councilman Al Quillen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start with the Code Department. We still have 220 issued permits in 2024. Also have 1,796 issued rental license. We are also doing rental license renewals, and have been sent and being processed. Doing violation inspections throughout the city, performing plan reviews and for new permits as well. And we have some large projects still going on with the Muirfield 1 Phase 3, which we're putting in 51 lots in there, and there's a lot of construction going on there. The East Park Business Center, the final building completed. Bel Air Single Family on Danville Drive. There's a lot of construction going on there. There's quite a few homes being put up there pretty quickly. Very impressed with what they're putting up there. The Western Sussex Business Campus, they're working on the interior, and the loading docks have been poured. The concrete's been poured. If you go out there, it's very interesting, the concept about how they've poured the loading docks there. Of course, the Nylon Capital Shopping Center, we had a good presentation tonight by Mr. Rob, and things are progressing along good there. Taylor Professional Center, building construction has started and the foundation has been poured. Moving to Parks and Rec. In the Parks section, the new pump has been installed at the Gateway Park, and the fountain is functional now. Mulch trees along Nylon Boulevard and around the Sporting Complex. replaced a bench along the riverfront, sprayed vines along Stein Highway Bridge, Conwell Hill, and Industrial Park. Moving to recreation, the men's slow pitch championships have been completed. Division I champs were the Beers and Dingers. Division A champs were the Mama Boys. We won't go any further than that. Okay. Have closed registration for youth flag football and also youth soccer. 140-plus kids have signed up for youth flag football, and over 190 have signed up for youth soccer.
Wow.
That's quite a few kids. That's good to hear. Also, they're advertising for a youth field hockey clinic, which will be held August 5th through the 8th. Also advertised for adult pickleball, which will be August 19th, 21st, 26th, and the 28th. Other things that are on the list here would be organized a Park and Recreation Committee meeting, which was held on July 10th, which was our first committee meeting that we had. It was very productive. We had Tri-State Community come in and do a presentation about refurbishing Jay's Nest, which was very impressive. And I think if we can partner with them, that will definitely brighten up that area and bring a lot more kids in there to play, and also some adult possibilities too as well. And on Friday, July the 19th, that was National Parks and Recreation Professionals Day. I don't know if we have a picture. Do we have a picture there? And Director Hickey put on a luncheon for all the employees, and I think they were very appreciative of that. I got to meet just about all of them, get to know them a little bit personally too as well, which was I want to do. And I think we have a very dedicated and proud team that wanted to keep our city looking clean and beautiful too as well. So I want to give kudos to our Parks and Rec team. And that's my report submitted.
Thank you, Councilman Quillen. A lot going on in the city of Seaford. We're not done quite yet. We got to solicit a motion to hold executive session here tonight. If I can ask for a motion at this time.
I make that motion.
Okay. Have a first from Vice Mayor Henderson. Do I have a second?
And I'll second.
Second from Councilman Quillen. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. Unanimous.